Good evening, Bonewood. We are on the very last chapter of Family Moomintroll. Probably have half tonight and then half tomorrow, at the rate we're going anyway. We've just been talking, haven't we? Because we were wondering whether the Hobgoblin was going to get his hat back, although that was taken by the Grogue, so maybe not. And there was also the Hobgoblin's ruby, which had gone missing, which is what the Hobgoblin was looking for it, and when he dropped his hat. And so we were trying to think whether we knew of any places where that might be. Did we have any ideas? No. Okay, so chapter 7, which is very long, which is why we're going to read it in 2 bits, and describes Snufkin's departure and how the contents of the mysterious suitcase were revealed. Oh, I wonder what's in the suitcase. Also, how Moomin Mama found her handbag and arranged a party to celebrate it. And finally, how the Hobgoblin arrived in the Valley of the Moomins. It was the end of August, the time when owls hoot at night and flurries of bats swoop noiselessly over the garden. Moominwood was full of glowworms and the sea was disturbed. There was expectation and a certain sadness in the air. And the harvest moon came up huge and yellow. Moomintroll had always liked these last weeks of summer most, but he didn't really know why. The wind and the sea had changed their tone. There was a new feeling in the air. The trees stood waiting, and Moomintroll wondered if something strange were going to happen. He had woken up and lay looking at the ceiling, thinking about the sunshine and that it must be quite early in the morning. Then he turned his head and saw that Snufkin's bed was empty. At that moment he heard the secret signal under his window, a long whistle and 2 short ones, which meant, "What are your plans for today?" Moomintroll jumped out of bed and looked out of the window. The sun hadn't reached the garden yet, and it looked cool and enticing down there. Snufkin was waiting. "Phew," said Moomintroll very quietly so as not to wake anybody, and then he clambered down the rope ladder. They said hello to each other, and then wandered down to the river and sat on the bridge with their legs dangling over the water. The sun had risen above the treetops by this time, and it shone right into their eyes. "We sat just like this in the spring," said Moomintroll. "Do you remember? We'd woken up from our winter sleep and it was the very first day. All the others were still asleep." Snufkin nodded. He was busy making reed boats and sailing them down the river. "Where are they going?" asked Moomintroll. "To places where I'm not," Snufkin answered, as, one after another, the little boats swirled away round the bend of the river and disappeared. "Loaded with cinnamon, shark's teeth and emeralds," said Moomintroll. "You talked of plans," he went on. "Have you got any yourself?" "Yes," said Snufkin. "I have a plan, but it's a lonely one, you know." Moomintroll looked at him for a long time, and then he said, "You're thinking of going away." Snufkin nodded, and they sat for a while, swinging their legs over the water without speaking, while the river flowed on beneath them, to all the strange places that Snufkin longed for and would go to quite alone. "When are you going?" Moomintroll asked. "Now, immediately," said Snufkin, throwing all the reed boats into the water at once, and he jumped down from the bridge and sniffed the morning air. It was a good day to start a journey. The crest of the hill beckoned to him in the sunshine, with the road winding up and disappearing on the other side to find a new valley and then a new hill. Moomintroll stood looking on while Snufkin packed up his tent. "Are you staying away long?" he asked. "No," said Snufkin. "On the first day of spring I shall be here again, whistling under your window. A year goes by so quickly." "Yes," said Moomintroll. "Cheerio then." "So long," said Snufkin. Moomintroll was left alone on the bridge. He watched Snufkin grow smaller and smaller, and at last disappear among the silver poplars and the plum trees. But after a while he heard the mouth organ playing, "All small beasts should have bows in their tails," and then he knew that his friend was happy. He waited while the music grew fainter and fainter, till at last it was quite quiet, and then he trotted back through the dewy garden. On the veranda steps he found Thingamy and Bob, curled up in the sunshine. "Good morning, Trubin Mole," said Thingamy. "Good morning, Bingamy and Thob," answered Moomintroll, who had now mastered Thingamy and Bob's strange language. "Are you crying?" asked Bob. "No," said Moomintroll. "It's only that Snufkin has gone away." And the chapter started with that picture of Moomintroll sitting with Thingamy and Bob. I think he might have a tear running down his cheek. "Oh dear, Potterwitty," said Thingamy sympathetically. "Would it cheer you up to nip Bob on the coes?" Kiss Bob on the coes. Any ideas?
Kiss Bob on the nose.
Yeah, that'll be it. So Moomintroll kissed Bob kindly on the nose, but it didn't make him feel any happier. Then they put their heads together and whispered for a long time, and at last Bob announced solemnly, "We've decided to show you the contents." "Of the suitcase?" asked Moomintroll. Thingy and Bob nodded eagerly. "Come with us," they said, and scuttled away under the hedge. Moomintroll crawled after them and discovered they had made a secret hiding place in the thickest part of the shrubbery. They had padded it with swan's down and decorated it with shells and small white stones. It's rather dark in there, and nobody passing the hedge would have suspected that there was a secret hiding place on the other side. On a straw mat stood Thingamy and Bob's suitcase. "That's the Snort Maiden's mat," observed Moomintroll. "She was looking for it only yesterday." "Oh, yes," agreed Bob happily. "We found it, but she doesn't know, of course." Said Moomintroll. "And now weren't you going to show me what you've got in your suitcase?" They nodded delightedly, and standing on either side of the suitcase, said solemnly, "Steady, steady, row!" And then the lid opened with a snap. "Goodness gracious me!" exclaimed Moomintroll. A soft red light lit up the whole place, and before him lay a ruby, as big as a panther's head, glowing like the sunset, like living fire. What is it?
The Hobgoblin's ruby.
So that's where it's been the whole time. "Do you like it very much?" asked Thingamy. "Yes," said Moomintroll faintly. "And now you won't cry any more, will you?" said Bob. Moomintroll shook his head. "You see it?" Let's let them see it as well. There we go. All sitting in the glade looking at the ruby in the suitcase. Thingamy and Bob sighed contentedly and settled down to contemplate the precious stone. They stared in silent rapture at it. The ruby changed colour all the time. At first it was quite pale, and then suddenly a pink glow would flow over it like the sunrise on a snow-capped mountain, and then again crimson flames shot out of its heart, and it seemed like a great black tulip with stamens of fire. "Oh, if only Snufkin could see it," sighed Moomintroll, and he stood there a long, long while time grew weary and his thoughts were very big. At last he said, "It was wonderful. May I come back and look at it another day?" But Thingamy and Bob didn't answer. So he crawled under the hedge again, feeling a bit giddy in the pale daylight, and had to sit on the grass for a while to recover himself. "Goodness gracious me," he repeated. "I'll eat my hat if that isn't the King's ruby that the Hobgoblin is still looking for in the craters of the moon. To think that this odd little couple have had it in their suitcase all the time." Just then the Snort Maiden wandered out into the garden and came to sit beside him, but Moomintroll was so sunk in thought that he didn't notice her. After a while she poked cautiously at the tuft of his tail. "Oh, it's you, is it?" said Moomintroll, jumping up. The Snort Maiden smiled coyly. "Have you seen my hair?" she asked, patting her head. "All right, let's," said Moomintroll absently. "What is the matter with you?" she asked. "My dear little rose petal, I can't explain even to you, but my heart is very heavy. You see, Snufkin, pardon me, has gone away." "Oh no," said the Snort Maiden. "Yes, really, but he did say goodbye to me first," Moomintroll replied. "He didn't wake anyone else." They sat there on the grass for a while, the sun gradually warming their backs, and then Sniff and the Snort came out on the steps. "Hello," said the Snort Maiden. "Do you know that Snufkin has gone south?" "What, without me?" said Sniff indignantly. "One must be alone sometimes," said Moomintroll. "But you're still too young to understand that. Where are the others?" "The Hemmelin has gone to pick mushrooms," said the Snork, "and the Muskrat has taken his hammock in, because he thinks the nights are beginning to get cold. And then your mother is in a very bad mood today." "Angry or sad?" Moomintroll asked in surprise. "More sad, I think," answered the Snork. "I must go into her at once," said Moomintroll. He found Moomin Mama sitting on the drawing-room sofa looking most unhappy. "What is it, Mother?" he asked. "My dear, something terrible has happened," she said. "My handbag has disappeared. I can't do anything without it. I've searched everywhere, but it isn't there." So Moomintroll organised a hunt in which everybody but the Muskrat took part. Of all unnecessary things," said he, "your mother's bag is the most unnecessary. After all, time passes and the days change, exactly the same whether she has her bag or not." "That is not the point," said Moomin Papa indignantly. I must confess that I feel most strangely towards Moomin Mama without her bag. I've never seen her without it before. Was there much in it? Asked the Snog. No, said Moomin Mama. Only things that we might need in a hurry, like dry socks and sweets and string and tummy powder and so on. What reward do we get if we find it? Sniff wanted to know. Almost anything, said Moomin Mama. I know. I'll give a big party for you, and you can have nothing but cake for tea, and nobody need wash or go to bed early. After that, the search continued twice as hard. They hunted through the whole house. They looked under the carpets and under the beds, in the stove and in the cellar, in the attic and on the roof. They searched the whole garden, the woodshed, and down by the river. The bag was not to be found. Perhaps you climbed a tree with it, or took it with you when you went to have a bath? Asked Sniff. But Moomin Mama only shook her head and wailed, Oh, unhappy day. Then the Snork suggested putting an advertisement in the paper, which they did. And the paper came out with two big items of news on the front page. Snufkin leaves Moomindale, mysterious departure at dawn. And in slightly bigger letters, Moomin Mama's handbag disappears. No clues. Search in progress. Biggest ever August party as reward to find her. And I think there is a good place to stop. And we will see tomorrow whether they find Moomin Mama's bag. And when the Hobgoblin finds his ruby. Right, are you two going to let me up? Turn the video off. Good night, everyone.